Hello, and welcome to In the DeNovo. I'm Will Grace, founder and managing director here at DeNovo Treasury, where we empower leaders of community financial institutions entering commercial and industrial banking with expertise for their strategic investment in treasury management products and services. We prioritize the how over the what. We believe in a collaborative journey and go beyond traditional services by actively transferring treasury management expertise to our clients. Thank you for joining us and staying in the know with In the DeNovo. Hello and welcome to In the DeNovo, episode 14. I'm your host, Will Grace, founder and managing director of DeNovo Treasury. And today I'm joined by the payments professor, Kevin Olsen. Kevin is senior vice president of innovation and strategy at Pigeon. Kevin, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Today's episode is titled Real-Time Payment Limit Increase in 2025. Kevin, that's where I would like to start today. On December 4th, the Clearinghouse announced it will raise the individual transaction limit on the real-time payment network in 2025. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, what you mean about the best thing that happened in 2025? Okay, one of the best things. There's a lot. I mean, 2024 has been a very active year in electronic payments. There's just no doubt about it. The Clearinghouse has had phenomenal success, going from approximately 40 million in the first quarter number of transactions to 60-some million in the third quarter. 20 million increase over 3 quarters. That's amazing in itself. That's showing that the network's taken off. And then seeing and realizing, hey, we're gonna raise the limit, and this is really like the third time I believe that they've raised the limit. It started off 100,000, now it's currently 1 million, and we only have like 3 months to even get it up there. I think that's like phenomenal too, that they're getting it up there so quickly, and it's because there's such a need for it.
What's been the frequency, or how much time was in between the last raise when they raised it to 1 million? Do you know how much time they gave the industry last time? I mean, they're giving us 3 months this time. Do you recall?
I mean, I don't, because it's just now like standing out to me that we don't have a lot of time, because usually when you see changes, like I compare a lot of things to ACH, because ACH, same day ACH is a faster payment. It's not an instant, not real time, but it's faster payment. And spent decades working in it. And usually what you would see with it is, okay, we have a rule change coming next year. Or it's going to come in stages. And that was always done to give the providers time to be able to make the changes and test everything. Granted, maybe we're not getting as much time on this. It's not that big of a change. And I almost want to say, if that breaks your software, you probably got bigger problems. So it's not like it's that big of a software type change to implement it.
Not at this point. It should be, like you said, it's not as big a deal as it used to be. So what impact do you think this will have on the RTP network?
I think it's going to be huge. In so many different areas, I really think it's going to be huge, because it's interesting when people look at instant payments and they start thinking of use cases. A lot of people think, oh, you mean those P2P payments? Well, the reality is, when I'm talking to people and I'm talking about whether it's FedNow or RTP, I would tell them I wouldn't go in thinking it's going to be a P2P application. There's too many P2P applications out there. It's a saturated market. And the private, app store is really taking care of P2P payments. But when it comes to business payments, when it comes to consumer to business to consumer, a whole new world really of payments, that is where this is going to be applicable. And that's where it's going to start taking off.
So would you expect this to spill over and have impact into the FedNow service as well?
Well, FedNow's limit is nowhere near RTP's right now.
Right. It's not at this point.
Limit. But I do, my experience tells me if one network does it, the other one's going to do it too. But here's the thing. I will not and do not see the Fed doing that big of a change. I don't see the Fed getting to 10 million in 2025. Maybe if we're optimistic, 26, but I still wonder about that. I think the Fed will do a limit raise. I do. I really do think this is already, I'm pretty sure somebody at the Fed read this and went, oh my gosh, Clearinghouse just announced a limit change. We need to change our limit. But they're not going to go that high.
Yeah, but in maturity standards, they're still kind of new comparatively, given RTP's been active since 2017, right? And FedNow, what was 2023? Do I have the dates right?
Actually, 2024.
2024.
I'm sorry,
Yeah. Okay.
2024 was its first birthday. So it was
Okay.
2023, July 23rd, 2023. Here we are, at the end of 2024, it's a year and a half old compared to, like
Yeah.
you just said, 7 years of RTP, 7 years of experience. So it
Yeah.
is still relatively, it's a toddler.
Yeah. So network participation education seems to be a significant factor in this limit raise, or would be. And those familiar with you or your persona of the payments professor, and speaking now to our listeners and our viewers, if you don't know Kevin, he's got a passion and an enthusiasm for payments and education around that, and he's well known for that. Why don't you share a little bit about your background as a payments professor and what you're doing at Pigeon, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, shameless plug, www.paymentsprofessor.com. All kinds of education. These are courses. There's actually a couple of free courses, but these are courses you can pay for to learn everything you need to know RTP and FedNow. But I also have an Instagram for Payments Professor and a YouTube channel for Payments Professor, where there's all kinds of free stuff, hundreds and hundreds of videos actually that are out there. How did I get there? That's the bigger question. I started off, I was born in Kansas. Okay, no, when I finally get to electronic payments, I started off, oh gosh, it's been a long time ago. Let's just put it this way. I installed ACH applications that were on floppy disk.
Right.
And I was around before Check 21. In fact, that's where I cut my teeth, was on Check 21, ACH. And I even remember too, I worked in software and software development, and even did phone support. And it was because I was so good at doing phone support that I had somebody in the industry say, hey, why don't you start teaching people? And ironically, I'd actually been teaching computer networking, and again, Windows 98 days, let's just say.
Oh my gosh.
And they're like, you're a good teacher. Why don't you start teaching? And I'm like, I'm not sure I understand it. And they said, well, you understand it better than the banks do. Oh, okay. And then I realized my superpower was I could read like ACH rules or Regulation E, and I understood it. And I could tell somebody else what it actually meant. And suddenly my career took off from there, to where I just started working in education, explaining what rules are, regulations, how things work. That's how I landed at Pigeon too. Pigeon is an instant payments provider. And as instant payments were coming around, I'd already been studying the instant payments around the globe. I actually had a presentation where I was going around conferences just to tell people what was happening around the globe. And I mean, they'd be blown away. Like, in America, we didn't know that was happening. We didn't realize, like when I even told people the first instant payment system goes back to 71, as old as me. They're like, no way. But I mean, it was a case of what it was, how it was used, but there it is in Japan. There's one that old. So, but it was one of those things that as computers advanced, the technology advanced, the capability came to be. I was seeing it because I've just always been that kind of guy that studies payments, seeing it happening. I'm doing this presentation on what's happening around the world in global payments. My current boss, he comes up, talks to me one day. He's like, do you know anybody like you that would like to work in software? And I'm like, me? That would probably be me. And I got the opportunity to come in and design a product from the ground up. It's been phenomenal. It's been a lot of fun, and having that passion for the regulations, the rules, building something that people can actually use, being able to educate people on it. I have a wonderful life. I can just say that.
Well, that was awesome. We're grateful to have you here today. We're also grateful to Pigeon. They're a friend of DeNovo Treasury, and Abhishek was actually a guest on our interview podcast several months back. So we're grateful to have Pigeon as a partner and as a friend. So thank you for being here today, and thank you for giving us that background and your shameless plug. We'll also make sure that we get that website up on our screen here when we do our edit. So the education piece is big. We mentioned the short time frame here. Do you have any concerns over, does that give you any heartburn, being the advocate for education that you are? Okay.
I mean, I got developers that are doing it, and there'll be some testing that's done. It's really, it's not a worry. It's not a concern. Of course, we as an organization will thoroughly test everything. It's just the unexpected nature. And it wasn't, here's the other thing, it wasn't completely unexpected. I mean, it wasn't like it just woke up and went, oh my Lord, did you see what just happened? This is something that's been at least in discussion for a while. So it wasn't that big of a surprise. It's just, hey, it's official. We got to make time for it to make it happen. And the world of faster payments is pretty busy because with what's happening in FedNow, with what's happening in RTP to bring this on, we've got a lot going on, but it's not something that can't be taken care of and taken care of well.
Yeah. And so with that though, the education with consumers and businesses is an important piece of this. There's probably some key use cases for industries that might benefit from this, from that limit change. You kind of started to hint on that already. So what do you think might come from this, from a use case perspective, or maybe an industry that might benefit from this that maybe isn't using it today?
Number one, real estate. I mean, there's just no hesitation. Real estate can benefit the most from this because it depends on where you're buying a house, of course. You know, and I've jokingly said RTP Network's great for real estate unless you're in San Francisco, because you know the average cost of a house, it's going to be above $1 million. Now suddenly you go to a $10 million range, and the real estate opportunities open up, even into commercial real estate, not huge deals, but some of the smaller deals. So the real estate community for those states, not all states have embraced this, but it's huge. And you know, try and tell people, we don't want or intend RTP to really cannibalize wires, but it does work, in my opinion, as a better wire in some circumstances. If you've ever bought a home and you've sat in that office waiting for the wire, waiting for the wire, waiting for the wire, RTP, there's no waiting. Boom, done 5 seconds later. And it's phenomenal in what it's already done for real estate, but then there's been that $1 million limit. Now that $1 million limit is out of the way. We can go into the $10 million range. I think it'll be huge. But I also think business to business. You hear businesses talk about, you know, I don't want to make this payment until the last day, the last moment. In fact, I know some businesses will say that we still want to use checks because I know I can float it and my cash balances are going to stay where they're at for a couple of days. So I still have those funds, you know, in my access or my use really. Well, with RTP going up to 10 million, you can so time exactly when that payment's going through instead of wondering when it's going to process through the mail. And I'm not a fan of relying on the US mail for things to get somewhere nowadays anyway. There's been so much check fraud, and there's been even people within the US mail, postal services that have been prosecuted as being part of that check fraud.
Yeah, and you know, there has been some hesitation, at least what you hear about hesitation with RTP and the concern about the cannibalization of wire. I do know that in some states, when it comes to real estate transactions, there is a requirement to use the wire system. Do you know if the clearinghouse is working with any of the legislature to try and loosen that up or make any changes? I know that sometimes they have some advocacy on, you know, the Hill and stuff like that. I'm just curious if you've heard anything like movement towards.
Well, I know this. I don't believe RTP and FedNow will ever completely replace all wires. I believe there are some places. Yeah, there's just some places they'll never be replaced. Sure. Or at least not in my career, let's just say. However, there's some places where it is a much, much better option and works more efficiently. And so I do know that the Fed, and I do know the clearinghouse, they're very good at promoting their networks and finding the use cases. And they do go out and they are in contact with the local and the state and the federal governments to be able to say, hey, you could do this. This is something that is available to you. Because like you said, there are some places that by rule or regulation, you know, and that old saying, well, this is the way we've always done it, which I hate, is still into play, and they are working to change that, and it is happening. It's a little slower than the payments take place, that's for sure, but it is happening.
Yeah, and you know, to your point, there are payment attributes for some things that'll always be, you know, there's always going to be a need for a wire. There's always going to be a need for an ACH. It's what payment attributes will drive what channel it'll go to. And we've never retired a payment system as an industry. and it's not going to happen in our lifetime. So I think that's something we can count on, I believe. So shifting gears just a little bit. What are your thoughts on the operational challenges that financial institutions or businesses might face with a higher limit?
Truth being, for financial institutions, I don't think it's going to be that much of an operational change. Here's why. There's already $1 million limit. And I know for a fact there's not as many senders out there as there are receivers.
Right.
And you have to be able to receive, no matter what, the maximum amount. However, you're receiving good funds, money that's settled in your account. So it's not even high risk. But on the send side of things, there's already $1 million limit. And there are people who already have limits lower than that set. So even though it goes up to 10 million, it doesn't mean they're going to change anything. Now, will there be some that will? Absolutely. What will it mean for them? Well, they already have in place policies, procedures for who can use it. They'll have to set appropriate limits or readjust the appropriate limits. They'll have to make sure that they have the appropriate monitoring in place because of the additional risk. The one thing that I would say that it will impact is the monitoring of the pre-funded balance account. That's the account that is used for settlement purposes at the New York Fed for the RTP network. And you can't send money you don't have. Now, the institutions that are going to go and start using a $10 million limit, they will need to make sure that their balance, their current pre-funded balance, is at a limit or an amount that accounts for that. However, the clearinghouse already has requirements of what has to be in there. So I don't think that's going to be a big deal either, but it will be an adjustment.
Yeah, it's an adjustment. And if you do business with the clearinghouse and you do wires and you've got funding positions that you're monitoring all day, even with the Fed. So hopefully it's just another position that you're managing. And yes, real-time payments just becomes a higher one that you're managing. So yeah, I'm in your camp on that. What additional risk management strategies should financial institutions have in place to manage those larger transactions that come through RTP?
Well, it's the same you've always had. It's just appropriate to the dollar value. So again, It goes down to who's doing it. I would definitely look at the velocity of them. I don't know if I want people doing $110 million transactions unless it's through the payments professor. If you want to send $10 million transactions to the payments professor, they won't be returned, but you can, to test them out. But that's the other thing is the frequency of them, velocity of them. I would be, monitoring more for that. And of course, who's they're going to. I know in some cases when it comes to higher dollar transactions, a lot of times we'll look at, have you sent to this person before? Because if you've never sent to them before, okay, it suddenly is a higher risk and maybe there are more controls in place for that type of payment. But it is looking at the same things you always do. Who are you sending to? How much are you sending? Have you sent to them before? What's the velocity of it? Is it out of, what is normal activity too? That's where I love behavioral analytics, things like that. You've never sent a payment at 2 a.m. on a Sunday morning before. Why are you suddenly sending $10 million? That type of stuff. But I don't know that the limit makes that change as much as instant payments and payments in general should have that type of monitoring anyway. And there is requirements for at least fraud reporting and to a level of monitoring in RTP already.
Yeah. So if you don't have that type of process in for your ACH and wire and payment activity already, that's something you should invest in now, especially if you're going to start doing instant payments. Because you're just going to be adding to potential risk and fraud issues if you don't have it. Because you just touched on something that you've made. We're not making an assumption, but we are kind of saying that, hey, these are best practices you should already have in place. Kind of this out of band, tracking of your payment activity. Mm-hmm. Right? That's what we're saying here. So you don't have it, get it.
Because granted, I will say without a doubt and have, instant payments does not equal instant fraud. Fraud happens, and it's not the payment channel that fraud happens on. It's the payment channel that fraud is used to move the money because somebody got scammed or duped. But because instant payments work so fast, it's appealable to the fraudsters to use it.
Right. So the higher risk of fraud is kind of the same as the higher, risk, the same processes that you're talking about for, risk mitigation. You put in for fraud mitigation as well, correct?
Correct. You want to have, there's no payment channel immune to fraud. Every
Yeah.
payment channel should be monitored accordingly.
Any regulatory concerns for financial institutions that they need to, with the higher limit, or is it going to be kind of the same things that they need to be concerned with?
I don't think so. I think it's really going to be the same. I always wonder what the CFPB is going to do because they are paying attention to instant payments, but that's only if it involves a consumer. If it's a business payment, CFPB has no say so anyway. And I do think that, we always want to see, is there anything going to happen? We don't really see a lot in regulatory changes anymore. We see more guidance, FAQ type stuff coming out from the governing bodies. I would say, you're going to have to do everything you've done. Your BSA, AML procedures have to be there. SARS reporting if there is fraud reporting to the network if there is fraud. Nothing new, just a higher limit that will be in play.
So we think this is really going to open the door probably for more business activity than it has in the past by increasing the limit and more use cases for businesses, more industries, and so on.
I don't see it, like I said, consumer to consumer, I don't see it.
Yeah.
Now, if it wants to happen again, if somebody wants to send me money directly to test it out, go right ahead.
We can put your routing number and account number up there if you want. I'm just kidding.
Well, just contact me directly and let me
bet you. Just contact you directly.
Even though you're going to give me money, I still want to bet you. But
however,
like gambling, believe it or not, some of these gambling websites, gambling apps, they're making use of instant payments for funding those wallets. I could see, hey, I get a $5 million win. Yeah, I want to do an instant payout on that.
That's an interesting application for it as well. So what do you think is going to be kind of next after kind of this limit raise in 2025? What do you think comes after that?
Well, I don't know. Maybe these are the golden unicorns of instant payments. One of them, people talk about interoperability between FedNow and RTP. Truthfully, I don't see it happening anytime soon, and I don't think we need to have that right away. Just saying. Some people don't like that I have that opinion, but when you look at the different networks, they've always had comparable services. The only one that really interacts is ACH. Otherwise, there's chips, there's FedWire. There's echo rules and check processing. That's different than echo rules. I just got to say echo rules apply, but there's check processing through the clearinghouse. There's check processing through the Fed. They're separate. Okay. Yeah. That's a fact. But so I don't see a need for these to have to interact anytime soon, but that's one of the things people talk about. What I do believe we will see, maybe not in 2025 or even 26, is in going to the more of the, well, you're going to love this, cross-border. But before that, what's going to happen, and it's kind of available now, it is available now, but what's going to happen and what's going to just floor the industry is requests for payment. If people start seeing and using, I got to be part of a request for payment myself in a payment here recently. And it wasn't like research for the company or anything. Tell you the story. I wanted to buy a stock. It's at a good price. I didn't have enough money in my wallet for it. I'm like, how can I get money in there? And I'm even thinking to myself, oh no, by the time I get the money moved over there, this stock's going to go up $5, $10 a share. And I'm not going to want to do it then. Right. So I'm like, well, I'm going to move money in there thinking ahead for the next time at least, or if it doesn't go up right away. And I had an option to do it instantly. And it did it through a request for payment. Now it's a me-to-me type situation, or really a wallet-to-me type situation.
Sure.
But what I got to tell you, what happened is, do you get any of those, texts through your phone or those messages that you're like, what in the world is this? Oh, I know it's fraud, or those phone calls. And you feel icky about it even, right? I didn't feel that way in doing this request for payment process. And it will come through secure channels. It can come through text, it can come through emails, and it can come through messages through your banking app. And for me, it came through my banking app, and I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. And it
Right.
walked me through the process, but I was able to get that exchange done, feeling secure about it, feeling good about it.
Yeah.
Within a minute. You start thinking and applying that to paying bills. You start thinking about how people can wait and pay their bill at the last minute. You think about how much additional data that can be sent along with it too, how
Sure.
it improves the process. No more checks in the mail. That's what's next. That's what's big. That's what I expect to see more in 2025 and really 2026. Then probably cross-border.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about cross-border, but what you're talking about, though, is what the real-time payment network was designed to do, right? This, this experience that you just described, the additional information that we've been trying to solve through the ACH for years, right? How do you get the information and the transaction to marry together?
Mhm.
And that's what the basis of the real-time payment network was designed to solve for. So that's exciting to hear that we might be on the cusp of actually seeing that realized. So that's really cool. Really cool. For guys like you and I that have been doing this for a very long time, right? Pre-Check 21 and, back to the days of sorting checks and whatever else we might have done in our early career, right? So this is really cool. Anything that you'd like to talk about or offer before we kind of close up today?
Well, one more thing, and that is for those listening that, if you're hearing all this and you're starting to realize, this instant payment thing, it is going to be the future of electronic banking, and you want to be able to help advance your career, there's a certification called the AFPP. It's Accredited Faster Payments Professional. It's offered by NACHA and by the U.S. Faster Payments Council. They've worked together to come up with the certification. The first testing class will be early 2025, so you can't get involved in it. But in 2025, you can start studying, learning about it. Go to your payment associations. They can help you. Go to paymentsprofessor.com. There's resources out there. But your payment associations like SFE, EPCOR, NEACH, ePay resources, they've got resources that'll help you learn all of this. They're very good at rules interpretation too. And start thinking about how you can better protect your financial institution and your career by getting that type of certification. And it's something so new that I do like to get the word out on it.
Very good. Are you in the first class?
I am. I'm going to be
Awesome.
taking the test. Actually, it's funny, and I was talking to somebody just today, and they're like, "Have you picked a date for the test?" I was like, "You aren't going to believe this, but I'm taking the test the second day the window opens." They're like, "Why so early?
Nice.
Don't you want extra time to study?" I was like, "I can't because of the window and my availability. I had to take that date."
Well, good luck on it. I didn't get signed up for the first cohort or whatever, so I'll have to take it next year sometime.
Well, you're going to love this because we knew it was only limited to 250 people.
Yeah.
I was on there like a teenager trying to get tickets to a rock concert. I was waiting for the window to open up, clicking the button. There was actually an error at first. I'm on the phone.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm getting an error message. I need to be able to get this. Is everybody else trying to? So, I mean, I worked hard to make sure I got in that first class.
Almost like you were a Swiftie for a day, right?
I was. Hey, I've seen Swiftie live. I loved it. It was amazing. I mean, it was
I'm sure it's
career, but she's amazing.
I'm sure it's amazing. I hear people go overseas to see it because it's easier to get tickets and sometimes cheaper, right? Or was. Now that it's over now. Anyway, well, Kevin, this was great. Thank you so much maybe I should say payments professor. Sorry, this is your alter ego we're talking to. Thanks for sharing your valuable insights and for joining us today. And thank you to our DeNovo Treasury clients and prospects that are listening or watching, and to all of our Into DeNovo viewers and subscribers and followers. So thank you for watching today's episode. And until next time, take care, be kind, and thank you. And thanks, Kevin. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of In the DeNovo. For more content like the video we shared today, check out our website at DeNovoTreasury.com and our YouTube channel at DeNovo Treasury. Thanks, and see you next time.